talked about the AI, the dilemma for AI data centers and the energy usage. And what I shared there was the estimates that were coming up in 2027. And again, they're estimates, but it was like 10,000 gigawatt hours to then 50,000 gigawatt hours that are estimated for electricity usage with just the AI training models. So the training these models and the equivalence of what that could be, to give you an example, for like here in the US, is that it would be all the homes for the whole year in Nashville would be less than 10,000 gigawatt hours. Like you still have way more energy usage there. And then for the 50,000 gigawatt hours, that's all of the New York City homes and Philadelphia homes for the whole year for electricity usage. So the amount of energy that's going to be required for estimates moving forward is uh, it's overwhelming. And it got me thinking a little bit more and getting curious as to what's been happening and specifically relating to what's been happening for the messaging around AI that I know I've seen and I've gotten a ton of that messaging about AI as a small business owner. And for you as a small business owner, you could already have gotten a lot of messaging about AI of how you got to use this. It's got to be, something you got to implement. It's going to be it can help out with so many different problems. But what problems could it also create? And it's not a situation where we're going to put the genie back in the bottle, but it's knowing how big that this genie is going to be for its impact in our daily lives, and goes back to your freedoms as an individual, including your freedom to decide how you make a living here in the US, which includes owning your small business. It's understanding where do we draw the line and the boundary for how we're going to use this tool. Because how some say is that it is going to be part of almost every single aspect of our daily life. And then for others like myself, I think about it of something I can use to quickly look for help with research and understanding, helping me to connect different points and using it in that way of how the current models are being used to gather information, and then where possible to streamline and be more efficient in the business. But we get to decide that. And that can get lost with a lot of people telling you this is how it's going to be. This is the way things are going to go moving forward. And you think about that in your specific industry, you're being told this is what is going to potentially be happening. And then it's not potential, but it's like most inevitably this is going to happen. Well, you have a say in that. You are able to be able to choose what this path is going to be like for the future. And that's where I think about AI. There has to be an AI redirection that happens moving forward, where it doesn't get to this point like Orwell's 1984, Big Brother. It's total, control over our daily lives. We give all of our decision making to AI. AI is going to rule over us and make decisions for us as human beings. Like that is talked about. Those are conversations being had. It's not crazy to say that. So that's a future I do not want. And now it goes back to, okay, well, as human beings, we have to unite. And as small business owners and Americans, we have to unite here in this country of how AI is going to be in our daily lives. What does that look like? Where are their boundaries? And as small business owners, again, 33 million small businesses that employ 45% of the private workforce here in the US, you have a big voice. And it's important for you not to forget that no matter what someone tells you. So, what I want to do today is set the stage for you. So, welcome back to the show. I'm going to set the stage of what's going to be happening for this week. There is a lot of information here with AI. It is overwhelming. And I'm not here to pretend that I'm an expert in AI. So this is where I also need your help as a small business owner for what the information that you're finding that you can share in the comments, because it's important for us all to come together and unite and have conversations about this and to understand where we can see the benefit. Because again, the genie's out of the bottle. There's no way to put this back in. Where can we see the benefits and make sure that we are creating boundaries where it doesn't get to the point where it's controlling every single aspect of our daily lives and we're like sheep as human beings, because that's a world and a country that I do not want to live in. And I hope that's a country that you would not want to live in either, is where you can continue to have the freedoms that we must preserve in this country. And one of those freedoms, too, is freedom of speech, being able to share your opinions, your views, and share your arguments as well. So that's important. Now, the number, so I want to go through some stats and what you can expect for the week ahead, specifically around electricity usage. So that keeps coming up of how much electricity these data centers use. And I'm going to focus on all the data centers, and what some estimates, again, these are estimates here, what some estimates say is between 15 to 24% is focused on AI. And then within that, there's a certain percentage that's just focused on on training these AI models. So that can help you to understand the whole overall here. But it's a conversation about control. That is the one hidden, that there's two hidden things that come up here. One is the environmental impact, and then the other one is control. And with control, the question to ask yourself is, what is easier to control? When there's a consolidation and a centralization, or when there are an increase in the amount of competition and a decentralization, fragmentation of the market. And so you think about that within your specific industry, and then overall in other industries, and overall in our country, which one do you think would be easier to control? And that is something we got to remind ourselves as we move forward with new technology developments, understanding what is going on here, for why we're being told certain things. When you can filter it through the worldview of power and the rest of us, just in your specific industry, and then you can broaden this out to your overall country, things that used to not make sense start to make a lot more sense. Where there is unnecessary regulation, where it doesn't make any sense, to where it becomes more difficult for barriers of entry to go into the industry, where there is this difficulty to be able to scale in certain areas, or when you're told, hey, you should just stick with how you're doing things and not question why things are certain the way they are in your industry. It's really important for you to be informed. And on the broader scale within our country, it's really important to be informed because, again, you may not, as a small business owner, may not care about politics, but politics will care about you. And that is why I want to keep talking about these different things, because it's important for us to not be ignorant here. And that's why it's so important to be informed in your specific industry, the history of your industry, as well as the country, and noticing these different pieces that are coming together for a bigger puzzle that we need to solve. So let me get into some data that I found that I am really curious about, that doesn't make sense to me for the messaging that's been given to us on an individual level, relating to the environment, and gets me to be curious and ask more questions. And that's what I'm going to be doing for this week. And I want to know what comes up for you as you go into your own research, or if you have any insights relating to this. So first, let me get into the data centers for 2024. This is what I could find, and I'm using AI here, Gronk, to help me with it. So this is where I think it's a benefit to use this tool. But for estimates for 2024 for data center electricity usage, it was 183 TWH, which stands for a terawatt per hour. And then let me get this up here. Okay. So you got 183 terawatt hour for electricity usage, and that is a massive amount of energy. Okay, that's a lot of energy usage. You think about that in gigawatt hours, which compares to what I was talking about with the whole electricity usage of New York City homes and Philadelphia homes for the whole year. That's 50,000 gigawatts of gigawatt hours. So the 183 terawatt hours is 183,000 gigawatt hours. So you think about that, that's even triple, over triple the amount of all New York city homes and Philadelphia homes for their electricity usage for the whole year. Again, these are estimates for the exact figures. That, like, again, these are estimates, but I can give you an idea of the amount of usage here. So I go to this narrative then that keeps talking about climate change. And I was brainwashed with the climate change of like, okay, you as an individual have the responsibility to take care of your planet and leave it better than when you arrived. And that messaging really resonated for me. I really believed in wanting to make this world a better place, make where I live a better place for my environment, and wanting to support this for future generations. But just some things don't make sense here because there are these different campaigns that are out there relating to you think of wood burning. So if you have a fireplace in your home with wood burning, there's an outdoor fires. If you're creating outdoor, you have an outdoor fireplace. Or a campground, and you're making fire out there. There you have these different campaigns of talking about how much pollution can come from wood fires, or fire burn. What am I saying there? Let me From wood fires. The talk, you think about these campaigns of like think before you burn. There's one in UK, here in the US in Washington. There's one in California, another campaign. But when you get down into then the estimates of numbers, things don't make sense because how AI is being shared is this is the future. We need to continue to put a lot of resources towards developing AI. It's gonna help solve so many of our problems. But when I looked at the data, what really struck me was relating to the carbon dioxide emissions equivalent. So CO2e, and thinking about particularly with data centers, how that compares to then, and again, we got to take the estimates of the 15 to 24% that are AI focused, but how that compares to then the 11 million homes that the estimated 11 million homes that burn wood. And the equivalent is that number when I saw it for estimates, it shocked me because for metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions, CO2e equivalents, for the data centers, and there's like under 6,000 data centers, the number ranges. There's not like an exact estimate here or exact number, but what I could find is under 6,000 data centers, there is 100 to 105 metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions equivalent from the data centers. And we're not even getting into then water usage, direct water usage. Now compare that to zero point 0.4 to zero point 0.5, again, estimates of metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions, CO2e equivalents from the estimated 11 million homes that burn wood. Seeing those two numbers and the drastic difference and where the scale is headed for building more of these data centers, requiring more energy, that starts to that doesn't make sense to me, and that's where I become curious and I ask more questions, and that's the plan for this week. Because that's where then control comes back up. Well, how with AI and the thought that this could control every single aspect of our life, why would that happen? And I've shared it before that there are evil forces that are out there. Whether or not you want to admit it or face them, it's important to know that there has to be. There's that quote that goes back to the strong man, the strong man, weak man, good times, bad times. That you may have heard that before, but there is a requirement of strong men in order to uh, protect against these evil forces that are out there. And there are these evil forces. And I think about that for Marxists, for Marxism, to globalists and the global elites. Control keeps coming up. And you can just on a micro level experience that within your industry of those competitors that We'd rather destroy the competition and not let them succeed rather than just focusing on growth and innovation. Like, that is out there in your industry. So it's not crazy to think on a global scale that exists, right? And when it comes back to control, well, then with AI, if there's this feeling that there's going to be an ability to, it's going to be easier to control, then that would make sense for pushing all of these benefits of AI without also explaining the negative effects and the impacts that this can have, such as on the environment, with the big push that had been happening in my lifetime for so many years about climate change. And that's where it just doesn't click for me. And that's where I get curious and want to ask more questions, because the amount of energy usage from electricity alone is, as I said, shocking. But then when you even get to water usage for direct cooling, so this is not even an indirect cooling relating to electricity, but direct cooling for these data centers, for 2023, it was 17 billion gallons of water. Okay. And then we're being told on an individual level that we got to watch how much wood we burn in our fireplace, and then we got to be the ones to recycle, and make sure that we're taking care of this planet on an individual level. And that just does not click. This is an example where it just does not click for me of how that makes any sense, outside of then, unless you filter your worldview through power and the rest of us. And it's really important to remind yourself as a small business owner, because those problems can feel overwhelming, that you have a big voice together when we unite. And that's a big part of this movement. It's a determined movement, is to continue to make sure that we are preserving these freedoms on an individual level here in this country, making sure that you as a small business owner, that there is an opportunity for support and growth moving forward, in how to bring about America's future in a way that is a small business renaissance. I believe in that. America's future is a small business renaissance. And what we have to get back to as individuals is bringing it back to shopping local. For those that are supporting small businesses, continue to shop local and localize the supply chain. As I get more into this, I realize a lot of these problems, we create massive problems, and then we put solutions onto these problems without even going to the root cause. And healthcare is a great example of that, of an industry, of how terrible it is when we're not focusing on the root cause, and we're just adding more problems and more additional more additional solutions to those problems, and making it way more complicated than perhaps it has to be. And that's just one industry, but you probably can feel that in your industry, or it resonates for you in your industry as well. And that has to change, because I go back to small business owners cannot ignore this for any longer. They cannot. Change is inevitable. You sense that. It's this gut feeling that is coming up, where there's change is inevitable, and economic disorder leads to political radicalism. And that is something where I do not want to see that happen here in this country, where we go in a direction where we have to go into an armored car just to travel around our communities, because it's so dangerous. I don't want that. I want us to be able to have a better quality of life for our communities, our cities, our towns, and for there to be economic order, and for our economy to grow and support how to raise the bottom 50% of small businesses and raise them up, and the ripple effect that can have. It's really important. So again, this right here relating to the data centers is, I believe, one piece of a bigger puzzle that is being developed, because I come back to the dynamic pricing, where you have these reward programs where companies, big businesses, can understand your buying habits and be able to understand more about you. You think about AI and the amount of information you're sharing personally, it will understand more about you. Then you think about wearables and the information that is being gathered through your wearables by these businesses. That is where, again, you go back to Orwell's 1984, if you've ever read that book, and this big brother vibe, that is coming up. And how could that not then connect back to what I've said before for those evil forces of Marxism and then globalists and the global elites wanting to control? And I go back to where the roads lead throughout history. There have been examples of communism, socialism, and the destruction that has happened there relating to it. And I think about specifically where the roads lead for, socialism being the appetizer, communism being the main meal. Where the roads lead to for the path is the abolish of private property. And when that happens, then it goes back to the freedoms that can be attacked on an individual level, and that is something we must preserve here in the country. That's something we must fight for our republic, and preserve fight to be able to preserve those freedoms that we have, which includes your freedom to be able to decide how you make a living, which includes owning your small business, and then being able to work with elected officials that genuinely want to support their citizens. That's the important role of government, is to support its citizens. And we need to get back to that. Because for too long, our ruling class leaders have sold out our future, and that has to change. And we've got to come back to our moral values and push that forward as a message of the importance of honesty, of courage, of self responsibility, accountability, and to be able to care for our communities and for Americans. So, more of this is coming ahead. I want to understand what you have gathered through your own research, through your own insights. Share that with me in the comments. Let's continue this conversation because it is a big conversation that needs to be had. And I'm noticing the different connection points with the other shows that I've shared about housing issue, dynamic pricing, the debt society that we built ourselves on, and how Gen Z is the most in debt society, or most in debt generation for their age in our society and in the history in the history here in the U.S. And we got to change things because the norm isn't working. So I'll see you tomorrow.